I'd like to thank everyone that was very, very helpful in reordering and adding folks to the committees. I appreciate your input and look forward to working with you with the next year on the committee. I really appreciate that for sure. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Anyone in the public wish to be heard? They're seeing none. The next item is the Finance Committee with members Chairman Randy Pack, Vice Mayor Butler, and Councilman Smith. Mr. Pack.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I open the Finance Committee, and the first is our audit presentation, and we're looking like maybe we're not ready for audit presentation.
I don't think we are. Is that working? Can y'all hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. I thought they were coming at 3, but we'll keep an eye. Do you want me to just jump into the financial
Jump right into your
statements?
reports, and we'll go there, and if we have to come back to them, we can.
Great. Okay, this is particularly for the new members. You will see that you received a packet of about 40 pages, and this is our overall financial statements at the end of December. And they're prepared at a monthly basis, at the end of each month. And the footnotes kind of describe what has occurred. Can you hear me okay? What's occurred during the month. But I also talk about important parts. I try to call out a little bit of information that might be helpful. Also, what I discuss are the cash balances, and that's in that packet as well. A little bit about what we're doing. We look at where our benchmark is for the investments to see how we are against the 90-day T-bill rate. And our investment policy has been updated. It was done in the fall, which includes pretty much what we are normally have, but broadens the scope of watching what's happened. We do a benchmark to see how we're doing against it. We seem to be doing okay, but we could always do a little bit better. We currently have 20 bank accounts, 3 of which were drawn down to 0. That was the general money market, special projects fund, and general cap escrow. And they were moved into the general fund so that we could invest it. The total that was is $847,106. And there were also other accounts that we're going to consolidate. It just makes it easier when you consolidate it down to fewer accounts. What we'd like to eventually do is let our general ledger determine the spend and revenue that we have versus open a bank account and let that do for it. It'd just be a lot easier to audit once we reduce how many that we have, because a lot of times you have to write back and forth, due from their accounts, and it just makes it easier. Let's see. We have a meeting to talk about that probably later on. I think it's either in a week or so. My team is going to talk about it, decide what accounts we're going to start closing. The reason we can't just automatically close them, we have to make sure that all checks have been posted against them, any items outstanding, and then we start to do the close process. So, any questions?
You said those reports, are we getting them in the mail, or how are they getting to us? You said for the...
In your packet.
Electronically.
Yeah, electronic.
Oh, it's in here. I didn't-
Yeah, it's in your packet.
I opened that up and I didn't see that. Yeah,
It's
that's
very
all.
long.
I apologize. Yep, I did see that.
We have the most. So I am just going to talk briefly about our debt. Right now we have a Series 2020B. That's a note with First Market. It was a note with First Market. We rolled that into just a line of credit. I guess you can call line of credit a loan. And we make monthly payments. The outstanding amount is about $966,000. We do have a line of credit that's not used, and it's $1 million. We also have a Series 2020A-2. Part of it's for water and part it's for the general fund. Outstanding for all of the debt we have right now for that is $3,117,000. We do, and that maturity is 4/1/33. The Series 2020A, which is all water, the outstanding amount is $118,000, and the maturity for that is 10/1/25. All right. Talking about the financial statements, can y'all hear me? Talking about financial statements, the auditors provided us with some adjusting journal entries, and those come from things like pension, interest expense, fees, capital outlay grants, due from, accrued payroll, and depreciation. Those are things that we start adjusting as the time goes, but then they look at it and then they give us the true adjusting entries that we need to make. The impacts to the fiscal year 23-24 were minimal the adjusting entries that we had to do, mostly because they were just payroll, pension, and a couple of other, the depreciation, as I mentioned. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the revenue right now. As of December 31st, for personal property, we collected $943,606, which is 84.44% of the budgeted amount. And this is par with what's happened. Anything after the due date is moved to delinquent. And of delinquents prior periods, as of the end of December, we've collected $30,850, which is about 140% of our budget, which is good. Utility tax, we've collected $79,551, which is 40.38% of the budgeted amount. There's still some delinquencies, and that's why we are a little bit lower than what we'd like to be. Sales tax. Isle of Wight sends sales tax to collected. They send it by check. We're working on that to see if we can speed up what that process is like. They do not send an invoice with the check. I may have mentioned this earlier. It's really hard to tell which month they're sending us the money for. Financial statement shows that we've collected $142,188, and it pretty much is in par with what we have, but again, I'll be working on that to see what we can do. If we added all the money we've gotten for them, we backed out some stuff that we got in July and August, and those are attributed back to the prior year, which was about $100,000, $85,000, $90,000, I'm sorry. We'll talk briefly about, we'll jump into the cash balances. How about that? Does anybody has any questions?
Chairman?
Yeah, please.
Laura, what's the interest rate on the roughly $900,000 loan we have?
That is, I'll have to get back to you for the
Sorry-
exact amount, but
sorry
I
to
do
put you on
believe
the
it's about
spot.
4.6%.
Okay.
Yep.
And if that loan were to be paid off, is it like a line of credit where it's still open, or is it just strictly a loan?
Strictly a loan.
Okay.
Yep. And we could
Thank
pay it off, but I'll let you know what that interest
Thank
rate, but I
you.
believe it is 4.6%.
Can you also let me know when that loan was established as well? 4.6. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
How often is it renewed? Like most loans, most line of credits are renewed.
We have a line of credit with, well, we had two, and then it was Farmers Bank and Town Bank, and then obviously they merged. And they were annual renewals, but we did a 5-year banking relationship where we looked at it every 5 years to make sure that was where we wanted to be. So, when, you know, Mr. Brooks, you asked about the interest rate on the loan, and she'll get back to us. One thing I found that being on council is that the government can borrow money considerably cheaper than anybody else in the rest of the world. Some of our loans last year, or probably 2 or 3 years ago now, were 0.26, 0.5% interest rates, which is just ridiculously low. So even a year in the 4.66 sounds a little high compared to some of the things we've seen.
That was my question.
Yeah,
That's where I was going with it.
yeah.
Yep. And since we do have capacity with the bank accounts, it'd be great if we could take some of that and just move it, but we will think about that. Cash balances, you have that report, I've got it back here. The cash balances in all the bank accounts, and this again was at the end of December. And what we've looked at too is you'll take a look at the investment pool, VIP investment pool, which is the last line of that. And I took and also included, I believe, the benchmark, how we're doing with our investments. And right now, the VIP stable liquidity pool, and this is an average rate for the whole month, is 5.55, which is a little bit better than the 90-day T-bill, which is our benchmark. Some of the others are not as good, but the sweep at Town Bank, I talked to the banker, and he said he would match whatever we get with VIP if we would leave some funds with them. So, okay, maybe we'll do that. So I still want to send $2 million to the VIP. I'm just awaiting on the final paperwork from them. I've asked for it and don't know where they are with that, but so that we can automatically transact that. Let's see. Town Bank agreed. We'll move 2 million mid-January, and the remainder will stay at Town Bank, but we're gonna watch it, just to see how they do. Let's see, again, the RFP for pre-planning for the banking RFP will be February the 5th. That's it.
Any questions for Ms. Ross?
I do have a question, Randy. I know in the past, we had several banking relationships. I don't recall where the majority of the relationship was, but with Farmers Bank and Town Bank merging, are we looking to keep our all the banking there, or are we considering splitting the relationship up between one or two banks?
I think it's always a good idea to split it up because you do give some business to some of the other banks. Town Bank has had some issues with the positive pay. We had to implement all of that with just following up on things, which we'll bring to their attention, which I always bring to their attention. But it wouldn't be a bad idea to move some of it around rather than I'll leave it all at one bank.
And
What's
that's
your-
what the RFP will assist with. So we're issuing a banking RFP this year. That's what she's working on February 5th, or I think is what you said.
Do you know who we're sending them to?
Well, you put it out.
Oh,
And so
okay.
any of the banks then
That
bid
are
on it.
interested.
And last time we did this, we had 10 or so banks respond. And we went with those that we were the happiest with. And I'm sure the town will respond. I can't imagine they wouldn't, but I would hope we'd get, personally, I've always liked doing community banking, dealing with community banks as opposed to the big guys. There's not a whole lot of those left anymore. There's Atlantic Union, there's Town. Actually, there's a few new ones in the market. Southern's in the market. So we'll have to see what it is. And if we're not getting the responses that we'd like to see, or some of the players we should invite them to respond to the RFP.
And I understand us wanting to do business with small banks, but I also think that some of the larger banks' banking is a little bit more sophisticated than the smaller banks. And she just voiced that concern with having an issue with Towns Bank response
Sure.
to positive pay. So I hope that we do consider at least one larger bank if they respond.
Absolutely, because you want to have the bank that is easiest for you all to get your money to, that it's easy to deal with. Sometimes I find that it's easier to put your day-to-day banking at one bank and then some investments at another bank. That way they do get some part of your activity.
Any other questions for Ms. Ross? Okay. Invoices in excess of $20,000 which require council authorization. The first one was to Athens Building Corp. This is for the Windsor Castle Boardwalk renovation project for $113.75. Amy, can you just update us on where we stand with that bridge?
That is the Jericho footbridge inside Windsor Castle Park. They're finishing up on pickets. There was a delay being able to get the size that they wanted. They originally thought they were going to have to rip down pickets to make them work, but they luckily found them that way. They don't have to worry about treating the wood or having to expose wood. So I imagine they would be able to finish up within the next 2 weeks, and then hopefully move over to Station Footbridge really quickly and get it done before the wine festival.
Okay, so is this a payment in full? This isn't payment in
No,
full.
that's not a payment in full, I don't think.
No.
So,
What,
but I don't think it'll be that much more for that footbridge, but that's probably what we're looking at for the Station Bridge and Mason Street.
okay,
But also note that we have the $48,000 T-Mobile grant.
correct.
That's not this number. It's not in the 315 that we originally allotted for the bridge renovations.
But we have received that money. It's in the bank,
Yes.
correct?
Yeah,
Perfect.
it wasn't a hoax.
Yes. What is the total balance on this contract? Are you familiar?
It was 315 was the total amount,
But that was for several bridges.
right?
Okay, gotcha. The other question I had is on the material being used on this bridge. Are we pretty confident in its ability to have some life to it? I understand that we have different salt-treated material than we used to. What makes you confident? It looks light to me. It looks like it's light, is not as treated as I'd like to see.
They assured us that it was properly salt-treated lumber, and then also we've added spacing in the boards that allow for a waterfall through it, where before they were so tight together, no materials would run on there, and so the water would sit on boards.
Right.
And then also we've added grates throughout the bridge that will allow water flow and prevent people from slipping when it's icy and wet out there. And so again, it gives place, so we don't have to sand the bridges and do stuff like that to
Right.
deteriorate the boards quicker.
As we're moving through this project, I'm sorry, I don't mean to hold your feet to the fire, I'm just looking at some of the things I see. There's other decking material out there. There's synthetic material, composite material, and it has a higher cost, but it also has a lengthy time span. Do we have, or could they provide us with a quote to replace, instead of doing the decking and treated wood, with a composite material, and what additional cost that may be, so that we can at least have that conversation? I don't know if it's something we want to do, I don't know if it's something we can afford to do. But, you know, and we have a lot of decking at the station, we do, and I'm paying a lot of attention these days to that treated material, as some of our contractors in here can speak to. It doesn't last like it used to. And there's different grades of it, and it's because of arsenic and whatever they want to speak to, but we still need to pay attention to what it is. So, you know, if it costs us another $10,000 or $15,000 today, as opposed to having to replace this again in 5 to 7 years, perhaps that's something to look at. And I understand there's more than just decking. I understand that your framing has to be done a little differently, but if they could look at that and give us a, hey, here's kind of what we think, and ballpark us on that, you know, I think that we should at least entertain that.
Yeah, I consider different materials, even metal grading all throughout. I also thought about wood patrons like that. People like to see a composite or a metal.
Yeah. Right.
If it keeps us with our bridges intact, I think it may be worth it.
Sure.
But I'll get a price on that.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. Okay, any other consideration on this invoice?
Just as far as that wood is concerned, find a pile of it, pull the tab off the end of it, read what it says on the tab, go on the computer, it'll tell you what kind of wood it is, and what
Okay.
kind of lifetime it's got, and things like that. That's the
Gotcha.
easiest way to analyze it.
Okay.
I understand that we also have another invoice that we're gonna have to be dealing with. Mr. Stallings, you gonna bring that up now, or you, the one involved the matter that you discussed with me?
It's later on underneath the water and sewer.
Okay, fine, thank you.
All right, anything else for finance today? Mr. Gill, maybe traffic, I don't know, if he shows up, we'll address it then, but for the time being, we'll go ahead and close finance.
Good deal, thank you. Next is public safety, with members, Councilman Collins as chair, Councilman Gibbs, and Councilman Brooks. Floor is yours, Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to open up the Public Safety Committee. We'll start off with the operational update with Chief Alonso.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. In the form of operational updates, you all have received our report. I'll be happy to answer any questions pertaining to that report. If there are no questions, I'll just go into the operational updates. Okay.
I do have a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Looking at the report with two questions, actually. One is that I noticed a 7% decrease year over year for traffic summons, but increase, but a 44% decrease in the summons. So that's stops versus summons. Sorry, I think I might have messed that up. 7% increase in stops and 44% decrease in summons. Is that
All right.
is there
Some-
any history behind that?
I'm sorry?
Is there any history behind that, or why?
There are multiple reasons. Our stops have increased, and sometimes the officers may give warnings instead of writing for every violation, and so that would be one of the declines. The other reason is staffing. We've had some staffing shortages. Even though some of our numbers have increased, some of the officers are riding two-man units, and so therefore, it's things of that nature that will have the fluctuation in those numbers.
Okay. And the only other question is a new guy question. Your next two pages with the list, what is that list? Because I see both traffic stops and then criminal offenses on that list. Is that
This list is It's a breakdown of calls for service that we have responded to during the month of
For the
December.
month?
Yes,
Okay.
sir, for the month
That's
of
what I was
December.
wondering.
So it just give you an idea of what type of calls for service we've responded to
Okay.
in the last 30 or so days.
Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Chairman Collins, if I may.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Chief, I have just one concern, not really an issue today. This afternoon about 11:30, we've switched to one-way traffic on the Cypress Creek Bridge. And it usually, from what I understand from the contractors, it takes 2 or 3 days for people to really get used to that.
Yes, sir.
I've witnessed one car today going the wrong way across the bridge. Can we do a little stepped-up enforcement just for the next couple of days, just to make sure that head-on accidents don't happen, as soon as we open this bridge?
Yes, sir.
So I'll leave it to you guys how you handle that and enforce that, but certainly just paying a little bit of attention to it until people understand what's going on.
Yes, sir. And thank you, because we had not received any complaint in reference to that. Had they called, we would have responded. But yes,
Sure.
sir, we will address it and look at it.
Yeah, well, hopefully it's not very many and we get it figured out, but
Yes, sir.
thank you.
Okay. On Friday, the town manager, myself, and Major Meyer, we did meet with the management company of TM Associates, and as it relates to Jersey Park Apartments concerning some of the issues that have been outlined. We had a good conversation. Some of the things we expressed was how time-sensitive some of these items are, and they assured us, as the town manager has put in a recent email, some of the timelines that they hope to achieve. We are working with them very closely as it relates to trying to make sure that they do what they say they're going to do and not giving us lip service. Recently, during the month of December, we borrowed a camera trailer from the city of Suffolk to place in the community. And during that time, during the time that the camera was in place, a mobile camera, and with the added steps that we had taken, our calls for service for that community has decreased. 2 weeks ago, the town of Suffolk did come and get their trailer. However, we have a plan in place that we had already budgeted for some cameras to be placed in the community, not just that community, but throughout town. And so we're looking to move forward with that. And today, we do have a presentation for the council as just an FYI to let you know some of the things that we plan to do with cameras in that corridor and throughout the rest of the town as it helps us with our crime-fighting efforts. So Lieutenant Woolley, at this time, will give his presentation.
Good afternoon. Do you have the clicker? Oh, you got it, okay. So we're just giving you guys a brief presentation on Flock so that you all understand what the Flock system is and then where we're putting it in the town. And then it'll also go through a little bit of budgetary, what it's going to cost, what we're going to get for it, and then a little bit of a roadmap about where we're looking to go in the future with it. So Flock is an automated license plate reading company. Flock Safety core mission is to prevent and deter and detect crimes. So currently, Flock Safety is utilized by almost everybody in the Hampton Roads area. In the nation, they service about 700 police departments. And in the Hampton Roads area, it's essentially everybody besides us, Poquoson and Virginia Beach. Every other jurisdiction has them. They're also able to be purchased privately. So currently in the town, there's 2 places that have Flock cameras. And that's going to be on Wren Road in Jersey Park, and that's going to be in Cypress Creek. So currently they are in the town, but we are looking to purchase our own. Those ones are managed by those property owners or HOAs. So Flock cameras are automated license plate readers. They are connected to the NCIC, which is the FBI's criminal database. So what happens is that the cameras will take a picture of license plates, typically, and it has software in it that will run that license plate against NCIC and determine if there's any sort of hit, as we would call it, which means is it a stolen vehicle? Is it connected to something criminal? And then it would return back with an alert to all the officers with, alert stolen plate at this area. Officers would check the stolen plate, they would run it through dispatch, and then it would give the result of is that a valid hit. So NCIC updates about every 6 hour, or it's twice a day. It's at 6 a.m., 6 p.m. about that it updates. So, you know, you have to verify that that's the hit. And then what it also does is it allows a searchable database for 30 days. So for this where investigations come in, so let's say we have a robbery where we know that a vehicle went X direction by flock camera. We're able to search that time frame of when that vehicle went through there to see if we can generate some sort of leads. So this is a photo of what flock cameras look like. This is kind of zoomed up into the actual camera portion. But if you could imagine that all it is a straight pole into the ground. So it doesn't take on any sort of exterior power. It's solar powered, which is very good for the setup cost. We don't have to pay to run power to these cameras. Again, I talked a little bit about the database and then the search function that's with the flock cameras. So how we landed on flock. So criminal activity is kind of what drove us to utilizing flock. We're one of the last in the Hampton Roads areas to start with flock. But it is a great tool that's been utilized in a lot of other cases. One of the biggest assets to flock is that it generates leads. There's a lot of times where something happens in an area where there's no camera, there's nothing to go on, and we, you know, respond and deal with what we have in front of us, and maybe we'll get a lab result, maybe we'll get something from that, but we need some place to start, and flock cameras are great at generating leads. This isn't the end-all be-all that this is going to solve every crime that comes to Smithfield, but it will give us an opportunity to generate some sort of lead to head us in a direction. So as I go through this, you'll see some of the camera placements. One thing that went through with the Virginia Assembly last year was some VDOT issues. With speaking with Flock to get through some of those VDOT issues, we have the ability to put some of those cameras on Dominion power poles to kind of get away from some of the VDOT issues, or place them on town-owned roads. So we'll talk about that a little bit more when we talk about the camera placement and why we're picking some of the places that we picked. And then cost. It is a subscription-based technology that does come with an annual cost. Currently, what we're quoted for, they have waived the install cost, and it is just the system cost. So year over year, unless they increase their prices, it should look like this. So a little bit about some of the cases, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but some of the cases that Flock has either assisted or helped solve would be one of the recent shootings with George Harrison, where we had a Flock photo of him holding the handgun that we posted to Facebook that I'm pretty sure we talked about in one of the last meetings. That was a Flock photo that was taken from that. Now, Flock isn't mainly it isn't focused on taking photos of people. It's based on photos of license plates, but as cameras work, sometimes we do get those photos, and this was one that essentially solved that case. The shooting in February where Larry Green, that's 107, those Flock cameras were utilized to see the suspect vehicle leaving and entering into Suffolk after the shooting, after we had developed a suspect. A few days later, because we had that 30-day window to search those results, we were able to go back and search those results and put that vehicle entering into Suffolk in a short time after our shooting. 2023 732, that's going to be the Powerhouse Equipment burglary. This was a burglary where a gentleman came in and stole 4 lawnmowers from Powerhouse Equipment. And what he did is he came late in the night, about 1 a.m., and stole them between 1 and 4 a.m. essentially. And he came back, loaded up one, went over to Portsmouth, came back, loaded up the second, went over to Portsmouth, came back for the third and the fourth. And we were able to track him on all 4 through Suffolk Flock cameras. And that's actually somewhat how we generated our leads, because we had a few things on scene that we were able to follow up with and finally get a little bit further. But Flock camera was pretty integral in us finding that suspect vehicle. And then the shooting on Lane Crescent, which is 853, we were able to disprove some statements by the suspect of his whereabouts utilizing flock cameras. And again, this is not utilizing our flock cameras, this is utilizing other jurisdictions' flock cameras. So not only will flock cameras allow other jurisdictions to do the same and help them with their crimes, but it's also going to significantly help us with ours. So a little bit about the placement. You can go ahead to the next one. So this is an overview map of the placement. It's a little bit zoomed out, and we're going to go through each section, but you'll see they're in pairs. So the way that the flock cameras work, you can go to the next slide, is that you see those angles. So right now this is at Middle Street, the entrance to Old Jersey Park. So the cone that you see, if you look at the top right camera, that cone, that green cone is basically the sweet spot. That's where the camera is going to optimize or take the best photos. So for this to work, it takes rear photos of the rear license plate because Virginia, even though that we have front license plates, not all vehicles do. We take photos of the rear. So you essentially need, for any road that you're going to put the cameras on, you're going to need 2 cameras on that roadway. So you'll see them paired up a lot. This one in particular has a 3rd camera on there. That is a PTZ camera. It's a point tilt zoom camera, which would allow us to look left, to look right, and to look down Middle Street. So it's a stationary camera there. It's not a license plate reader. It's a stationary camera that would allow us to pan in that area remotely. The next one is down by Dave's Service Center. So this is our waterworks entry or exit into the town. And you will see 2 cameras, and these are posted on Dominion power poles. This is Route 10 and West Main Street. So there was a little bit of an issue because these are solar panels, and that's how we're powering this. So we had to work with Flock to see where would we get the best, not only sunlight, but also pictures and coverage of that area. And this was the area the best that we could cover it. If we go too close to Route 10, those trees on the right are going to cover the solar the solar panels to where we might lose power at certain times. This was the best placement that we could get in that area to cover, to get the solar panels. So these ones are pretty spread apart. One of the main reasons is the VDOT right-of-way right now. At the base of Turner, that right-of-way is very large on the Turner side. So we aren't losing anything by bringing the 1 camera closer because the VDOT right-of-way kind of sucks in a little bit as you get closer to Tractor Supply, but it's still the last exit out of the town. So whether it's right at that exit or if it's at Turner, they can't go anywhere from there but into the field. So we were able to suck that in some. And this is the Battery Park corridor. We didn't do it along the turn closer to Nike Park, and that's again because of the sun for solar. But this is where we have the placement. So you can
Now, all these are proposed, correct?
correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure because sometimes I couldn't understand whether you're talking in the present tense or past tense or whatever. These are proposed locations?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. These locations, not only when they are installed, but they are movable. They're held in by a post. It's very easy for us to pull the post. There's no power going to it. So once, let's say Mallory Farms is up and running and we want to move a camera in a certain direction, we would be able to do that at a later date very easily. So the cost of the cameras, so currently we are quoted $33,750 for the cost. Like I said, currently we have the install fees waived. Depending on approval, depends on if that continues. It's only, it's a small amount if it takes a little bit longer. But that is for 10 flock cameras and 1 Condor point tilt zoom camera.
So that's just to purchase the cameras.
So that is,
installs?
so
waived?
that is our annual contract for them.
Okay.
So that includes the camera, that includes the actual camera and the software and everything that goes with it.
And storage capacity for the
Yep.
cameras or pictures?
Yep.
Okay.
Is there any maintenance requirement?
So not, unless you get into the solar panels with snow and stuff like that, you know, but other than that, no. Because they're self-sustaining.
You finished with the presentation? Is that it?
We have a growth strategy a little bit. So currently, right now, we're looking to implement flock cameras at least by March. We are missing a few entrances and exits. In July of 2025, we're looking to purchase 6 more to cover those entrances and exits. So like we talked about with VDOT and some of the right-of-ways and where the current camera placements are now. Like Route 10 towards Surrey, we can't put any cameras on Route 10 right now because, one, there's no Dominion power poles there, and the right-of-ways are so large that we can't place cameras there. So,
General Assembly, have you checked the bills in front of the General Assembly this
so
year?
there is one up, but it's not,
One in the House, one in the Senate,
yeah.
that would allow,
And that,
require VDOT to allow you to
Yes.
utilize their, okay.
yeah. And we're hopeful that, Danny, is that who put it forward?
On the Senate side.
Yeah, I'm hoping that that will get passed, but currently that's where the placement is.
So how are these triggered? Is it by any movement or is it by a certain size that crosses the camera? And the reason I ask is, so the cost for it, there's a storage fee, and that's going to have some sort of capacity to it.
So there is no storage cost.
Okay.
It dumps into the database for 30 days and there is no limit
Oh,
on
so
that.
there's no okay,
There's,
okay.
yeah, there's no storage on the devices, it goes to the.
And nothing in the cloud or?
So it goes to the cloud. So Flock has a website. The cameras will dump into the website and then it becomes a searchable database through there.
Okay. These do work. I've been on the road a little bit. I just got back and then over at Cypress Creek, something recently happened that a car came through and our camera caught something that I think, helped you guys or something. So it did work in a certain instance. Okay.
Comment, Mr. Chairman?
No, any other questions?
I think your strategic plan is good. I can recall, as I say, back in the old days when I was working the road, Smithfield, just the design and layout of the town, if you do it right, you can seal off Smithfield pretty well if you've got the manpower on the road. And when we would have, not a secret anymore, but back in the old days, we would basically, if we had a crime, we wouldn't necessarily run to the crime. We would run to the corridors and station at the corridors. That way you could analyze what was coming, what was going, and then you could wait for a suspect vehicle possibly to be reported. And of course, that technology was nothing but two-way radio and old police work. I think they've got a good plan here. I would really like to see the General Assembly come through, because if you're gonna establish this type of plan and this type of equipment placement, you need the entire area. Saturated is the right, but at least covered. The other thing is, when it gets out and criminals realize to an extent that flock cameras are being deployed, I don't know that there's any statistical data out there, but I can assure you, once they know that they're being watched and things like that, it will ultimately reduce it. I find the cost to be extremely reasonable, considering what this does and what the potential is. Of course, you've always got the civil liberties aspect of it, the privacy issues and things like that, but someone that's spent their life enforcing the law, I think most that don't commit crimes would support
okay
this
with it.
type of approach. So I applaud the police department for coming up with this type of approach. It's unobtrusive, doesn't do anything. Only does worry me a little bit is when you start placing these poles and you start moving the poles, other people can move the poles too. which bothers me just a little bit as far as that's concerned. But this is state of the art. This is where we're going as far as, unfortunately, the way law enforcement is going to have to go. I think it's a good plan. I've seen these cameras and know how these cameras work for several years before. A lot of people don't realize it, but on every bridge and every tunnel in the Commonwealth of Virginia, these cameras are there. And those cameras on the bridges have helped us before. Otherwise solved a homicide issue that is still pending in court based on that. So you know, for that amount of money, I think it's a pretty good idea, and I hope like heck the General Assembly is wise enough to pass the VDOT issue to allow the utilization of those poles. They let them use it for other stuff and things like that. I don't know why not this, other than maybe a privacy issue, but anyway. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
Good comments. So that leads to a question. So what is the next step? Where are you in this process, and what's the future of it?
Well,
Need some money.
Yeah, I know that, but
Actually, the money's already in the budget.
the money's in the budget, this is FYI, this is
Oh, it
something
is,
we're
okay.
planning to do. Some of the holdup was trying to get VDOT approval, and now we're trying to do a workaround through Dominion Power. So,
got it.
that's our workaround to try to get around the holdup for VDOT. So we're trying to be aggressive and not wait and try to get
Good.
these implemented, because we have found that it's a very good tool. And if we're gonna be out here fighting crimes, we want to have everything to our advantage to help us to solve crimes.
I agree. Anything you can get, I think the mayor's comments were spot on, so anything you can do to get that help would be appreciated.
Just one other question, if I could, Mr. Chairman. Do we know where the Secretary of Public Safety and Secretary of Transportation stand on those bills that are in the General Assembly?
I do
How
not.
about the Virginia Association of Chiefs of Police and Sheriff's Association? Do you know if they're, State Police Association, you know if they're banging the door down to try to get this done?
I know from going to Hampton Roads Chiefs meetings that they have lobbied Virginia Chiefs of Police Association, and they are lobbying for us. However, VDOT's lobbyists were a little stronger. So we're hoping that things will take place this year, and we have a positive answer when the General Assembly ends in March.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. So the next step, clearly because contract's over $20,000, we'll have to have council approval, so we will put this on agenda as a consent item. And again, the money is in the budget. We budgeted for it in this budget year. So that would be the next step, is just getting authorization for us to enter into the contracts.
How much would the additional 6 cost if we authorized to utilize those?
So they're $3,000 apiece. The only issue is that some of the VDOT
Where'd you place them?
placement. So,
Right, but that's what the
Yeah.
cost is gonna be to us.
6,000 apiece, or 3,000 apiece.
And they're gonna waive the installation on those two if we get,
I can try to sweet talk them.
I think that was a yes.
thank you, sir.
I do have a question, Michael. From the report that you sent us today on Jersey Park Apartments, one of the areas that they had highlighted were cameras. And I know from the initial meeting, there was extensive conversation with the police department. Do you know what kind of cameras they're installing?
This would be the security cameras within the facility that would monitor 24/7
Oh,
is what
okay.
they will be installing. And as the chief mentioned, they already have flock cameras at their entrance that they put in place. So what they're looking at doing now would be replacing the existing security cameras within the facility.
Okay, but they already have flock cameras at their entrance.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we coordinating our flock cameras with theirs?
Yes.
I don't recall from this presentation, what that entrance looked like at Wren's Road, based on what we're getting to.
Yes, we do have access to the flock cameras that's on Wren Road.
Okay,
And the cameras that they're looking to install within the complex is to record the regular footage of whatever's going on, the activity.
inside the complex.
Inside the complex. And
they
they're
have-
looking,
They would give us access to those as well.
yes,
They would or would not?
Will.
they are planning to.
It's 24-hour access?
Yes, sir.
Do we know the percentage of success rate of these flock cameras?
Explain a little bit further.
Okay, we're investing in some new equipment. Based on the areas that currently use flock cameras, what is their success rate of solving crimes?
I don't know. It's hard to judge. So flock cameras do a lot of different things. It's from stolen license plates to also, being able to have the searchable database for certain things. It doesn't specifically solve crimes. It generates
Well,
leads and
assist in
presents.
solving crimes. I know the cameras themselves don't. I just don't want to see us invest in some equipment and the success rate is not positive.
One of the things that flock cameras will do, it does record the license plate, but if there's a vehicle that has a bumper sticker on the bumper, that is, it may be trivial, but if a witness indicate to us there was a red bumper sticker or something on the bumper, that can also be you can search the database for, let's say, black pickup truck with a bumper sticker, and it will give you all the trucks that matches that description. So, excuse me. So the information that the cameras provide is invaluable. You can weed out trucks. You can zero in on a suspected vehicle. As the lieutenant mentioned, that was one of the things that led us to be able to make an arrest in one of our recent commercial burglaries here in town.
Okay.
Just one further, if I could. Aren't Amber Alerts, Ashani Alerts, Silver Alerts also downloaded into those databases as well?
That, is it?
So that's another good reason.
I think it's a hard question with a success rate because it all depends on the camera and what it captures, but it is a valuable tool to get a successful.
And then also if you have the staff to actually go in to pull up the information.
And to review the information. Yes.
I think it gets sent to you, doesn't it? Does it not? It alerts and sends it to you. They don't.
For stolen.
They can go back and research if they need to research to look at, but if it's something that's a hit, stolen or something like that, they're gonna get an alert, without having to pull stuff up. Now, crime's a little bit different, but,
Just today, there was a hit and run here in town, and the information was broadcast to the officers. One of the officers was able to log into the flock system and was able to trace a pattern as to where the vehicle had been traveled, reached out to that jurisdiction and was trying to locate where the vehicle actually was registered. And so it's not we can use it in large cases. We can also use it in small cases. This is a tool that can be used by the officers on a daily basis.
Is that everything?
I think it's a good proposition.
You brought up that report, Vice Mayor. If you don't mind me asking a question, I read through that report today. I thought it was all very positive with the dates. I think Mr. Pack and Vice Mayor last month had talked about. So it looks like things are coming through on that with some follow-up dates here next month. One thing that caught my eye is something that was called Antisocial Behavior and Banning Plan.
What that
What are they-
is, if there's individuals that are in the neighborhood that are causing issues, they can ban them from the premise.
Actually evict them.
Right, and even if they're not people who live there, they can still ban them from the property, and then the police department can enforce that as a trespassing issue.
Interesting, okay.
Once you tell them stay off the
That's-
property, and then on top of that, give them a notice, they show up on the property, it's prima facie evidence of trespassing, and you don't have to do anything but hook them up.
Okay, all right.
It's a good tool to have in place,
makes
especially for problem properties.
Yes.
Very nice. Any other questions?
Okay,
Seeing none, I'll go and close the Public Safety Committee.
thanks, guys.
Thank you all.
Next is the Water and Sewer Committee, Chairman Mike Smith.
If I may, before we get, I'm sorry,
Randy, oh, sorry?
our auditors will not be able to make it. They'll be at the next meeting.
Do we have any type of clause where we can fine them for that or anything?
They have to bring snacks.
That won't work. But anyway, good. Thank you, Laura, I appreciate it. So Water and Sewer, Chairman Smith, Councilman Pack, and Councilman Gibbs. Mr. Smith, please, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have an appropriation resolution. I think Michael can explain this so it makes a little more sense about
Yes,
where
sir.
this money's going.
Yes, sir. I've got a couple items, and I hope you're ready to spend some money this afternoon, because we're going to do it. The first deals with the relocation of service lines in the Red Point Heights area. We have been working over time to move all of the service lines from behind the homes out to the front along the road, so it's easier to service, less likely to get tore up by trees, and when homeowners are doing work in the backyard, what have you. So over the years, we've put money to this each year. We have recently been made aware that some of the private utility companies, the gas, cable, those folks are getting ready to do some significant work in that area. And so that has accelerated the pace at which we need to complete our work. So we currently have about $175,000 worth of work we need to do to relocate all of those services. We've got money in the budget already this year, but to completely fund that, we need to appropriate another $127,000, which will let us go in with the contractor, hire and get it all done before the other utility companies come in and start doing their work. If they do theirs first, then we're going to have to work around theirs and try not to hit it when we do all of our service lines and everything. So this will let us be the first ones in the ground, so we don't have to worry about that.
Didn't we have some ARPA funds that we had used on
Yes.
this initiating
We
this project?
did. Yes, sir.
Okay.
We used some ARPA funds to initially start this, especially down Jordan. But this will do Jordan, I believe it's Edgewood, and a couple of the cross streets back there as well. But this will finish that and get all the service lines moved to the front.
Do you recall what we spent on the ARPA funds when the first time we,
I think we had about $150,000 in for those projects.
okay,
And we have 48,000 of that is left, and that's what is in the existing budget this year. We rolled that money forward at the beginning of the year.
and there's no consideration to use any ARPA funds on this at all?
We could. I mean, that's an option. If you would like to, instead of pulling it from the fund balance, pull it from the ARPA reserves, we can do that. There are funds there we could use that for. So if that council wants to have that discussion and go that direction instead of the fund balance, we can do that.
Any comments or thoughts about that? Randy?
Michael, if you will, just update us, with respect to ARPA funds, there is a series of milestones with which we have to make before we lose our ARPA funds, and we don't want to lose any. Can you remind us what they are, where we are on those?
We are good. When the generals, or when the federal government, they passed one of the resolutions that they did once they were doing all this, any locality that received less than $10 million could declare all of it as lost revenue. And so that's what we did. We declared all 8.7 million of ours as lost revenue. So therefore, we complied with all of our reporting requirements, all of our timelines, everything.
Okay, so our time, we have the money, the
Yes.
timeline is gone.
Right.
Okay.
And there's still about 1.4, 1.3 million left that we have not
Of
earmarked. for
unassigned,
anything.
yeah, okay. Question?
Have there been any other plans, talks for those funds? Have it made any back of the mind commitments that people are thinking?
Nothing, the only things that have talked about, when the town committed money to the farmer's market building, originally that was just general fund dollars. There was talks about using some of that for it. There was talks about putting some of it towards the South Church Street pedestrian path project. But both of those are fairly, again, they're out there, and we've got the money, so we could use that money, and I don't think it would hurt anything, especially at only $127,000.
So, and also to answer your question a little better, Jim, the 1.4 that's unassigned is unassigned. There's a larger balance that has been earmarked for different projects. 4 million or so out there,
Right.
give or take. So using rough numbers, 3 million, yeah, this is what we're gonna do with this 3 million, and there's a process in place to get that done. The 1.4 Michael was just referring to is the balance that is unassigned, meaning, if we wanna use 127 for this or any of the projects that Michael spoke about, we haven't dedicated that money to it yet.
Right.
these ARPA funds that we have used have really helped out in making some improvements that we would have really had to find money to do that. It's been a blessing, really, I mean, especially in public works.
It helped us get maintenance and other capital projects in the Public Works Department, up to schedule and even ahead of schedule.
Yeah, and I don't want us to forget that sooner or later, they will run out.
That's right.
So we'll
Yeah,
have to be
use them
thinking about.
prudently.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
so-
if that's the consensus, it's as simple as me changing this resolution and we can,
I still would like some clarification with the response, I guess, that Randy gave Jim. When we had that discussion about what we were going to commit to the farmer's market,
yes, ma'am.
if and when that comes to fruition, I'd just like to hear some feedback on, are we still committed to our 1.2 or 1.4, or whatever it was, to give as the county has decided to give? And, what is the feedback on where is that money coming from?
Right.
Are we still committed to doing that?
Yes, ma'am.
And if we are,
We
where
have
is,
not rescinded that commitment, and
Okay.
when we made it, it was from general fund.
from general fund?
Right.
Okay,
So we didn't commit these funds to it. Now, when we have talked in previous conversations afterwards, we talked about that one, because it was about 1.4 left, but we never committed any of that. So the commitment we made to the farmer's market was with general fund dollars.
okay.
And while we're on that point, I guess it segues right into, I received a phone call or a text today from the developer who desires to meet this week pertaining to the farmer's market, just to get things off the ground. He'll be in town Thursday and Friday, and what my intent was at the end of the meeting, but now that we're on there about if it should come to fruition, when it's not going to come by, well, it's apparently moving at least. And what I'd like to have is to have you, Ms. Winslow, and Vice Mayor Butler, who's agreed to be on the task force as far as the farmer's market, to get with Mr. Luter, see what, this is the first meeting at all since the rezoning has gone through, see what the deal is. As I've indicated to Vice Mayor Butler, I'd like to have these meetings in as public as possible, realizing, Mr. Reddick, that there are certain issues that may deal with real estate, may deal with certain things that may require closed meetings, but I would really like to have all of this out in the open the best we possibly can. So, Michael, if you can, or Vice Mayor, whoever you decide, since you're the Vice Mayor and Chair of the task force, if you want Michael to get in touch with Mr. Luter to arrange the meeting, you said you're available on Friday, whatever y'all decide to do, but someone get back in touch with him, because I have not gotten back in touch with him since I've received the text. I think Judy said she gave her availability of what she's got or whatever, but, so the reason not to spring it on anybody, but I didn't want to wait until the end and say, well, but anyway, that's what's going on. So whatever y'all can do to move along and represent the town as far as these discussions are concerned, keep us informed.
I do have a question about that meeting, Judy. Is that a joint meeting with the town and the county?
I don't believe, I'll read you.
Why would he meet separately with the town when it's really a collaborative effort between, well, the commitment has come from the town and the county?
The question was, could he meet with Judy and I to begin with to discuss this matter? I am not going to, at this point, meet when I've got certain things in place that involve you, involve Judy, and then I want the town manager there. I don't want really an informal meeting, I want a business meeting.
No problem, but the farmer's market is really a county's entity, isn't it?
Yes.
Actually, the
It's
farmer's
kinda
market is a
confu-
standalone entity.
I was under the impression that it was a county's entity.
It is umbrellaed under the county in terms of administration.
Oh, that's what I mean.
Yeah, but the county doesn't give any money
do we
Neither
give
do
money
we.
to it?
You do, you get $5,000.
We do?
We give under our donations.
Yes, yeah, and under your donations.
So how about y'all meeting with them, see what's going on and see what the deal is and report back? I think that's the best thing to do. And your issues that you've got, you can bring them up during the course of these discussions.
Okay, Judy, I'm only available, I'm out of town Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and I can only meet on Friday.
Can you do Friday morning?
I think, I have a commitment on my calendar for advocate meeting at Ben's United Methodist Church. But I do have a commitment at noon in Hampton. So I'll forego the other meeting, but I have to meet, it would have to be prior till 11 o'clock.
I'm actually off Friday, so yes, yeah, and I've got some things I've got to attend to later in the
Okay.
day, but yeah, before 11 would be perfect.
Mike,
Mary
Mike,
Ellen,
are you good?
Would you like me to set that up? Would you like me to set the meeting up?
Sure.
Mike, I want to apologize for getting off task with your,
Sorry, Mike.
Well, I guess my question is, if it's a standalone entity and just sort of under an umbrella, why are we giving any money to them? It sounds like to me that if we're giving them money, $5,000, we're part of this entity.
I think you're certainly as a part of this entity as anyone else.
Yeah, and my next question would be, do other donations come in to
Yes.
help them? Okay. So it's a collaborative effort with the community,
You
so.
are considered a sponsor.
And I do agree with Vice Mayor that all along, we have been thinking that this was part of the county. We've just sort of been glad it was in Smithfield. And so that's how I take it, and I know that's how the public takes it. So I would like to think that in this meeting you have, that you're able to make sure that the county gets involved in this, not just the town. So any decisions are made collaboratively with each other instead of just us.
Well, Judy's county, so,
Well-
yeah, that's why I wanted her there. I didn't want
Right,
just
right. Yeah.
town people there. I wanted someone that's got background in this as well and is representing the county at times. So that was the method to my,
Yeah, it's already a hot issue.
idiocy or madness, one or
Right,
the
well,
other.
I think it was a good idea. But I do think that the scrutiny of it is already out there, so it's gonna be more scrutinized than ever.
Absolutely.
So it's really gonna have to be, like the mayor said, we really need to try to keep this out in the forefront of the public.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
and this will be purely an introductory meeting. That's what my hope is of this meeting, introductory, hey, where do we go from here at the end of the meeting?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And we've always kind of, introduced the farmer's market has always been a self-sustaining, which we always say, this is how much money we bring in, this is how much money goes out, and they have to balance.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
to add to this conversation, I've been invited to this meeting as well, but not as a council member, as a partner in the Grange, the brew pub that we wish to present. My understanding of this meeting is how is this supposed to work? How are we supposed to kind of minimize it? Who's responsible for what? As a business partner in this, what do I bring to the table? What does the town bring to the table? And that's what the purpose of this meeting is, so that it can get laid out and brought to the public, like, hey, here's how we think this works, how the common area maintenance fees work, who owns what. That's the gist of how this is, the beginning. I hardly think that we'll get all that laid out in one meeting. But I believe that is my understanding of what this meeting is about, is what this is supposed to be.
Well, that's fine. It's a fact-finding meeting without
Fair.
any determination to be made or obligation or agreement on anything as far as I'm concerned in appointing who's going to go.
Understood.
That's what I want.
Being that I'm a sitting member of council, I didn't want anybody to be surprised when they see me there, but my role is different. It's not as a town council, as I did not vote in the past for this, I will continue to not vote on it in the future. But I don't want anybody to say, well, oh my God, what's Randy doing there? Well, that's what
It's
I'm
a
doing there.
public meeting,
Understood.
so whatever, they're not,
Yeah.
all due respect.
Yeah.
Getting back to the appropriation resolution.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we got off track a little bit, and I apologize for that, but
Me too.
we need to think about whether we're gonna use the ARPA funds or whether we pull it from the general fund, is that correct?
Yes, sir. Well, it would come from the water fund, but yes.
Is there a consensus?
Well,
on
Mike,
that?
I think the fact that we've already used some ARPA funds for this project, I think that it would be amenable to use ARPA funds to complete it.
I agree.
Totally agree.
It makes sense.
All right, I will adjust that resolution and it
All
will
right.
be in your packet.
Good.
Not to mention, you don't ever know, I mean, those monies that are out there, yeah, they're there, you don't ever know what Congress is gonna do one day and say, well, we've got to come up with this idea to do this and do that, and guess what? No ARPA funds, gone. So, anyway, that's what concerns me, and I know there's other things that are out there waiting for ARPA funds, but utilities, and I know what these utilities are like. I remember when Russell Batten and Robert Jordan would go back there, and they'd have to walk through somebody's backyard up under their air conditioner to find a water line. And that's no exaggeration, that's the way, when they put that subdivision in.
It was all private back then.
It was,
Yeah,
sure.
That's right.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, okay. Any more questions? If not, I'll close water and
Well,
sewer.
I've got one more that was late.
Okay.
This one's a little bigger.
Yes.
Well number 10 is one of the wells that's in the RO plant, the reverse osmosis plant. We have been having some production issues with that well that we have noticed for a couple months and have been monitoring and trying to, get to the bottom of. We've had one of our engineering firms go out and do an evaluation, as well as the company that does most of our well work for us. They have developed a course of action, which is the proposal that's included in the packet, that does require us pulling the well pump, pulling the motor, cleaning the well, doing all of the inspections, and putting a new pump back in. When we do that, though, we are going to take the old pump and rebuild it, so we have one on the shelf, so we have a spare in case something happens, because right now we don't have one. So, unfortunately, the cost for this is $247,965. So it's not a cheap endeavor. However, it is one of our main production wells, and so it's not something that we can really gamble with. We do have sufficient funds in the water fund debt service account, which, as you may recall, was set up for the RO plant. So this would allow us to cover these expenses from that fund. Again, everything's in the packet as far as the work that would be done. But they were initially concerned that there may have been some issues with the casing of the well. However, it's a PVC casing, so we're not having the oxidation from the casing. It's something in the screens or from the sediment around the well. So this will get us the well completely rehabbed and back in service. It is still functioning, it's just at a lower efficiency rate right now.
No question?
Yes, sir, just one, how long's that pump been in there?
That is one of the original pumps. It was not, when we had the other one pulled out of service and rehab, we did not do both, and so this is the other one.
I don't know if you got any choice.
Well, I think having the money available, being in there just for this, I mean,
Yes.
that shows us that we've tried to get ready for something like this to happen. I don't see where we have a whole lot of choice but to straighten this out and,
And the
move
hope
forward.
is that by rebuilding the old pump and having one on the shelf, if we have an issue, we have less downtime in the future. Again, not having any idea what back orders may be in place when we have to do this again, but at least we'll have a spare pump sitting on the shelf ready to go in the hole if it needs to.
Is the rebuild factor into the cost?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Any questions about that?
Okay.
The only other question I have, and I think I brought it up before, do we have cameras at the RO plant?
I'm not sure that we have any in the plant. Our SCADA system monitors every aspect of the plant, and And that's kind of how we noticed this. We noticed some of the efficiencies in the data coming out of the SCADA system.
Okay,
And
so there's not any security type cameras in that, where people could enter the fence or cut a fence? We've,
There,
I've had that.
there are some on the outside, but as far as internal monitoring stuff in the plant, I don't believe there are in the plant, but there are external cameras that are security cameras.
Yeah,
And then
I'd
we
like,
can-
I'd like for us to look at something on the interior, so in case
And
something.
I'll double check. There may be some
Okay.
that I'm just not
All
aware
right,
of.
thank you.
Good point, Mike.
Okay. So what you will see on the agenda for the council meeting is this proposal will be there, as well as the resolution that will appropriate those funds from that debt service account. So those will be the two items that will be part of your consent agenda at the February meeting.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I'll close water and sewer.
Next is Parks and Recreation Committee. Members, Councilman Gibbs, Vice Mayor Butler, and Councilman Brooks. Mr. Gibbs, floor is yours, sir.
No report.
No report.
I can give some operational updates if you'd
Put
like.
some operational updates,
Okay.
yes.
All right, Looter Sports has been quiet, as has Windsor Castle events, with the exception of the Bob Fest, which was very successful. Most of the activity has been at the Smithfield Center. We've had something almost every day, whether it's business meetings or weddings and receptions. We even had our first quinceanera at the beginning of the month, so that's fun to have different kinds of events. Windsor Castle Foundation will meet with Kimberly Horn for the second time next Monday to discuss the Windsor Castle master plan that they're developing for them, that will talk about amenities and future improvements. So we're looking forward to that. And our two rec leagues that use Looter Sports as their home base, both paid their fees for the year, which totaled up to $28,000, $28,700. So good income for slow time for Looter Sports. And we don't have any special events out at the park in the month of February, but we do have Black History Month lecture series happening here at the Smithfield Center throughout February. So I'll put those dates out for everybody to see. Any questions for me?
Yeah, I have a question.
Any questions?
Are we moving forward with the buildings out there?
Oh, yes, sir, I forgot that. On my email right now, we have the bid packet for the Looter Sports concession building that will be adjacent to the football building. We currently don't have funding for the park maintenance building, just want to touch on that and remind everybody. Really looking forward to getting that building built so we can maintain our equipment and do it safely and out of the cold, because this time of year it's really rough to work on equipment.
Chairman.
Randy?
On the maintenance building, Amy, there's a considerable amount of parking lot that goes along with that,
Yes, sir.
right? Is it possible to split the parking lot and the building so we could look and say, hey, well, maybe we can't afford all of it now, but if we want to go ahead and get this building done, it's X amount?
I'm willing to do that because I want the maintenance building, we need it, but I think we're selling ourselves short. We really need the parking. We needed it when we built the place. It's so
Would
busy
you rather
on a
us do the
Saturday.
parking first? Would you rather us build the parking first?
No,
Because it sounds like perhaps that's what you'd like.
It sounds like she wants both, Randy.
I want it now.
both now.
I think if we build a building, like the Field of Dreams, if we build it, they'll come, so I just, so,
That's what's happening.
That's how Looter Sports started. Boy,
Yes.
have they.
No question. SRA,
Yes, sir.
refresh my memory, I know that there was the deal without going into a whole lot of detail, but SRA, explain to me how this whole thing works as far as they're paying back a debt?
Yes,
correct?
sir. Each year they pay $30,000 in January towards their $300,000 debt, and we gave them 10 years to make those payments.
What was that for?
It was in
Because
lieu
I
of-
don't remember.
It was in lieu of selling Beal Park.
It was in lieu of selling Deal
Yes, sir.
Farm.
It was their
That was
financial
part- That was part of the
contribution to the
original
project.
deal.
Okay,
And
because I
they
wasn't on
decided,
council.
and they decided they didn't want to sell Beal Park, and so the council said, okay, just pay us over 10 years. Because it was supposed to be a $300,000 cash
cash to the town.
And that is in addition to their rent that they pay.
Right, they pay an annual lease payment of $25,000, which is a set amount. And so we'll look at that over the next couple of years and see if we need to adjust it, because the football MOU is membership-based, which seems to work well for that group, because the better they have of a year, the more money we make, and if they don't have high membership one year, then it doesn't hurt them, because they pay less.
Okay. Thank you.
Any more
What year are
questions?
we on that loan? What year are we on that $300,000?
I think we're on year 4,
Okay.
but I need to verify
I
that.
know they're on schedule, correct?
Yes, sir. They haven't missed a payment. There was one year during COVID where they didn't pay their lease payment, but nobody was able to use the facility during that season.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs.
Close Park and Recs.
All right, the next is Public Buildings and Welfare. Chairwoman Vice Mayor Butler, Mr. Pack, and Mr. Collins.
Okay, on the public buildings and welfare, we have 2 public hearings that will be coming before us at our next town council meeting. So Tammy, take it away.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. The applicant for 107 Institute Street is seeking approval for a special use permit in accordance with the zoning ordinance Article 3HC 28. This is for a waiver of yard requirements to allow 0 side yard setbacks. The current building is non-conforming, and it currently has 0 setbacks for the left side. The applicant wants to propose a ramp on the front of the building to allow ADA accessibility. The ramp would have 0 side yard setbacks on the left and allow for a 3.78-foot right side yard setback. It will feature a planter along with a brick wall and white vinyl fencing. During the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant also presented a second option that does include a chair lift that would allow for slightly larger setbacks on the left side, 5 feet 6 inches. At the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting, this application was favorably recommended to Town Council with staff conditions. And then the application was also approved by the BHAR on Tuesday, January 16th, 2024. Positives, this application will allow the applicant to bring the existing non-conforming structure into compliance while also providing ADA accessibility. Negatives, this is not a by right use and does require a special use permit. Thank you.
Is there any discussion?
Just like to add one thing. At the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant asked for essentially approval to do one of 2 things. One of which was a ramp, and Tammy laid that out in here. So it's a ramp that we kind of wind up and do a ramp, or a chairlift. And his request was that we approve both and allow him to do either or. So that's what Planning Commission didn't have a problem with either one, and we would leave that up to the applicant to do that, and that's what was recommended to Town Council. So this is Bob Clay's old insurance office is what it is, and its future use will be office space. It's not residential.
One question if I could, because I don't want to take anything or assume or for granted. Tammy, the chairlift and the ramp would both satisfy the requirements under ADA?
So that is my understanding. Just for clarification, though, this is for a 0 side yard setback. What Planning Commission approved for either or was on their site plan amendment application for Planning Commission, but what is coming to Town Council is for the side yard setback. My understanding is when Mr. Hall started doing the improvements, the county told him he did have to bring it into compliance with the ADA standards, and those were the 2 options that he's presenting, so they would have to be compliant in order to get his approval from Isle of Wight County.
Okay, thank you.
So,
Thank you.
Chairman, so does that mean, is it coming back to Town Council? We're only approving the side yard, because I remember the discussion at Planning Commission, so is that coming back to us later on the option he's going to choose, or what is that step?
So that step already occurred. That's the site plan amendment. That was part of Planning Commission. Planning Commission approves the site plan amendment. It does not come to Town Council. This is for the special use permit, which is allowing that 0 side yard setback, which goes to Planning Commission for a recommendation to Town Council.
So then is the final determination Planning Commission of whether he goes with the ramp or the or the elevator?
Or the ramp or the chairlift,
The
that is
chair,
correct.
yes. Okay, oh, okay, so it does not, okay, got it, thank you.
I like to commend Mark Hall for his commitment to the downtown historic district. I mean, he's done, and the Clay Building, he said, has probably been vacant for 20-plus years. So I'm looking forward to him bringing that to life.
It was a busy place back when.
And the second public hearing, Tammy? I'm sorry. We will move this to consideration to town council meeting on Tuesday.
Yes, thank you. The applicants are seeking approval for a proposed text amendment to the attached residential zoning district. The applicants would like to construct 130 condo units. This is at the parcel behind the Royal Farms. These units would have 0 lot line dwelling units with attached rear detached garages. Each lot would be approximately 34 feet by 91 feet and approximately 3,094 square feet, featuring a 12-foot front yard setback. In order to have a mechanism to bring this application for review and decision, the applicants are proposing a text amendment to Article 3E I-10A1, which would state all AR district provisions shall be met as if lot lines existed unless approved by a special use permit. They are also proposing to repeal Section 2 as it's a consolidated in Section 1. This would allow the applicants the ability to apply for a rezoning of the property to AR and seek potential approval for their proposed project. According to the definition of dwelling, single-family attached, it does include 0 lot line dwellings. Currently, the zoning ordinance treats condominiums the same as attached residential dwellings in regards to the setback, density, and yard requirements. This proposed text amendment would allow the applicant to apply for a special use permit to allow their proposed development. They would still be required to rezone the property, request a change to the future land use map, and request any additional SUPs or waivers that may be required. Staff has identified that the project at the very least will require an SUP to exceed maximum density, an SUP for a smaller lot width, SUP for a waiver of parking and loading as they would not be providing RV parking, a planning commission waiver for open space not contiguous, rezoning to attached residential, and a future land use map amendment. The property was previously rezoned to multifamily residential. This was to allow for 15 10-plex buildings at 150 units. The application was favorably recommended 4-1 at the Tuesday, January 9th, 2024 Planning Commission meeting. The positives is this text amendment would provide the applicants with a mechanism for their proposed project. The negatives, the current zoning ordinance does not have a mechanism for this project to move forward. The applicants are proposing this text amendment to allow them to then submit the application for the proposed 130 0 lot line condo units. Thank you. And the applicants are here if you have any questions as well.
Randy,
Yes, ma'am.
from your representing us on Planning Commission,
Yes, ma'am.
can you elaborate on this in,
Yes.
okay.
Okay. So currently, there are 15 10-plexes approved with a site plan on that site that anybody could go in and start immediately because they have approvals to do so. This is a different applicant than was originally proposed that is looking to purchase his property from the approved applicant. And he is proposing a different product. It is not 10-plexes, they're individual standalone units. Rather than debating the merits of his project today, or at Planning Commission, or at Town Council, all this applicant is simply asking for is an opportunity to apply. Because right now, there is no opportunity to apply. If Town Council says, no, they don't want to make the zoning amendment, the project is dead in the water. Ms. Clary just identified 6 or 8 special use permits that would have to happen for this project to happen. But right now, that's as it is. Right now, he cannot do anything with it. We don't have a piece in our zoning ordinance that would allow for him to even apply for this product. And so that's simply what they're asking for. It's just an opportunity to apply. And in order for them to apply, council has to change our zoning ordinance with a little text amendment that would allow them an opportunity to apply. There has certainly been some conversation at Planning Hill, even though the applicant is in front of us, he has a general plan in front of you, and you have it here. And there were comments from the public about this. Obviously, it's seen some on social media, and there's been comments on this as well. All they're asking for is a chance to apply. I'm not here to necessarily defend or debate the strength of the application. We can do that if we move along to the application phase. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. But I do have another question. So based on the information that you shared with us, we don't have a zoning ordinance for this type of project.
Correct.
In your requesting a text amendment from us, what do the surrounding areas have? Do they have zoning ordinance for this type of individual condos or this type of project?
So town staff did not want to endeavor trying to create an entirely new zoning designation to address condominiums. Right now, what we do is in our MFR and in our AR, we just defer, even if it's a condominium, we just defer back to the AR or the MFR regulations. As you can see by the project that they're proposing, the use of this condominium doesn't quite fit with your traditional multifamily residential structures or your AR structures. And so that's why, working with the applicant, we crafted this new language that would allow them to apply for special use permits when they were constructing condominium units that didn't meet the AR setbacks or the MFR setbacks.
And, well, I guess the reason I asked that is a lot of our ordinances are outdated or have never been updated. So I guess my question is, based on today, and there have been several projects that have been requested just in the county and the town recently, well, just in the Hampton Roads area. Does it mean that we need to have a more updated ordinance to be able to attract various types of projects? Or do we just want to stay where we are?
Can I weigh in on that?
Yes.
Okay. When we write our zoning ordinances, you can't anticipate everything.
Right.
You can't put everything in there. It would be a tremendous book, this one. This product that they are proposing is a very similar product to what was built in front of Decoys in Suffolk. So Suffolk has some sort of mechanism to build this product. I think as we go through, and Smithfield's becoming more popular, Isle of Wight's becoming more popular, we're going to see things come through.
Okay.
And I think it's reasonable for this council to consider changes as they come in front of us, rather than trying to anticipate what changes may be trending in the building world and the residence world. I don't know what's particularly trendy in apartments right now, but if you look at some of these in Richmond and some of the districts there's all sorts of apartments that are trending and different things they do with those. I don't think we need to go out and mimic what's trending, but as stuff comes in front of us, we as a council should look at it and say, does this make sense to make this change, or does it not make sense to make this change? I think that's really what the question comes down to us, rather than tasking planning to go out and say, okay, rewrite all our zoning ordinances to see what's in today's modern world. And that's kind of what happened with the PMUD, based on our consultants when they came in and wrote it and said, hey, you guys really ought to have this in here. And we wound up doing that. And today we have one in front of us that says, hey, we don't have a way to do these single-family homes that are condominiumized but not attached, but this text would allow the applicant to at least apply for it. So, I mean, that's my opinion. I don't think we go and try and rewrite all our zoning ordinances to bring up forth anything that may potentially come forward. But as stuff comes to us, we ought to look at it and see if it makes sense.
And I agree with you, Randy. On the other side of it, I see it poses a problem to our citizens. PMUD, very example. They think that we're making adjustments specifically for developers, for a particular developer, and that's really not why it's being done.
Well, in this case, we would be making a change specifically for a developer. They've requested the text amendment because they don't have a mechanism to apply. But that doesn't make it wrong. That doesn't make it, because a specific developer requested does not make the request wrong.
and they don't own it themselves, it becomes law that could be used as it goes down the road for other folks that may come across.
To use it.
Yeah, so my feeling in this, in all due respect, is this is another tool in the toolbox as far as zoning is concerned. And voting for it today allows that tool to go in the box, but it in no way indicates one way or the other how we would ultimately vote for the project when it came before council.
Well, and I agree that. I only asked that question for whoever's watching this meeting, because it's already perceived that we're making this change to approve this project for developers, and that's not true.
People, let me tell you, I watched, as we were talking about a little while ago, social media and this, that, and the other, and that people want to do that, that's all well and good, but the perception of some does not weigh heavily as far as what I believe the majority at times want. I think we saw a lot of that with the last project that we had, right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm just saying that in this scenario, these folks are asking for this to enable them to accomplish their project. They may ultimately get half of what they're asking for. They may ultimately get the zoning tool to go in the toolbox, but then at the end of the day, who knows what they're going to get as far as the final decision is concerned. And I think to rely on what some people may perceive or what they want to advocate, whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent in this scenario, would not be fair to the applicant or to any others. And I'm not preaching that way, but at the same time, this is just a chance for me to say, I understand how people feel. I moved to Smithfield in 1982, and I've said it before. People are concerned. They are very, very cautious and wary about the influx and us being the #7 growing community in the Commonwealth of Virginia. But at the same time, we have to keep up with the times and keep up with the trends. And as I think one of you said, we can't keep going out there and just carte blanche, look at the entire ordinances and try to carve it. When somebody comes with an idea that might ultimately be a good idea, I don't have a problem with it.
And Randy, thanks for that explanation.
Ms. Tree.
Yeah, over the years, we've done our best to amend the ordinances from time to time. The thing that we've tried to do is acknowledge what the new trends in housing are. 40 years ago, it was a 1 acre lot. That was the gold standard. Well, nobody has 1 acre lots anymore because the cost, the cost of building roads and infrastructure and all that kind of thing makes the houses almost unaffordable. And one of the big issues in America today is affordable housing. And so you kind of have to acknowledge the trends as they come along, and you have to adopt rules and regulations that allow you to even consider the new trends. And if you don't, doesn't mean you approve them, but you've got to at least, I think you have to at least be open to new things. And that
was my point exactly.
This is kind of a new thing. And if we don't
Well,
look at new things as they come along.
and that really was why I asked the question. But Randy said things that are trending, we don't necessarily want to change, give our overall ordinance a change based on what's trending. So I guess once we approach with it.
Well, I don't think it'd be hard for the planning commission to foresee housing trends, but you kind of have to look and see what's coming down the pike and what is a new thing, and at least adopt rules that let you consider them. I mean, they may not be right for Smithfield, but if you don't have like somebody said, if you don't have the right tools, you can't do the job.
True.
I think we're gonna see more and more condominium-style projects as people don't want to do yard maintenance, don't want to do exterior house maintenance. I mean, I think we'll see more and more condo-style projects.
They don't.
Which could also be a PMUD too.
That's right.
They don't want yard. There's a whole generation that doesn't want yard work. They just don't.
Yeah, that's one thing that's kind of interesting about this project is if it were ultimately approved and you purchase a home there, you don't cut your grass, you don't trim your bushes. They paint the houses in there every 5 years. I don't know what their HOA fees are, but they're probably higher than what we have today. But it is interesting because I take pride in cutting my yard. It's really enjoyable for me to do it. But that's not the way that the world is today. And it could be young kids or it could be older adults who are like, man, I'm sick and tired of weeding the flower bed in the spring or whatever. So it's interesting to see.
The developers are here today. Would you all like to say anything?
I think the point has been made.
Oh, okay.
That, you know, if this text amendment does go forward, a future approval would still require, you know, a plan commission and council vote. So, you know, if this text amendment, you know, is approved, it's not necessarily approving this project, it's just allowing us a chance to move forward with it. Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are there any other questions in reference to that? If not, we will move this zoning ordinance text amendment to our meeting. And Attorney Riddick, boundary line adjustment and discussion on sunset clause.
And this discussion is kind of for the benefit of all of you, but certainly for the two new council members, because you probably don't know much about it, but there was a memo circulated, a map circulated to each of you. Out by Turner Drive, the town has a really unusual boundary. The boundary is right at the corner of Turner Drive, but then it makes, you see the pink line right there? It makes a quick jog in and runs back. And it omits part of a lake that's existing. All of this property is the property of the Molly Turner Trust. And this whole idea for the boundary adjustment was suggested by the county, really. And there's sort of they have a motivation with it. They've approached the property owner about acquiring property out there across the street that's not going to be in the town boundary for a future school expansion for athletic fields. And as an incentive, they would like the town to take this property in as potential development property so that it can be served by utilities. Now, you recently adopted a water agreement, a new utility agreement, and that utility agreement that says that this area, along with some of the other back there, will be served by surface water from the county. So it won't be a burden on the town's water and sewer system. It'll be served by county water and sewer, but all the development will be controlled by the town. So if anybody ever makes any application for development of this property, it's subject to your review. And that's what this is really about. It's a voluntary boundary adjustment. It's still annexation, it's just an abbreviated form. And the town says, we'll take that property in as part of our corporate limits, and the county says that's okay. And we have to go through a public hearing process. We've done this in the past. We did it with the Scott Farm out on Battery Park Road. It comes with a waiver of annexation agreement, which we signed in, and it says for 10 years, we're not going to go out and pursue additional annexation. Well, I don't think there's the town in its comprehensive plan and other planning has not identified any other areas that we would propose to take in with annexation, certainly not in the next 10 years. So that's part of the deal as well. So the yellow line would be the new corporate boundary, and if it's agreeable to council, we would go ahead and schedule a public hearing for this. The county's ready to do this. In fact, I think they're going to probably do it February 15th, something like that. They're off to the races with this. All the documents have been drafted. I've reviewed them all. We've had to amend them. Actually, they were drafted about a year ago, so we've had to update everything from 23 to 24. If it goes through and everybody approves this, it would be anticipated this would become effective midnight of June the 30th, and it just requires it's a lawsuit. We file a joint petition between the county and the town, and there's a public hearing, and then there's a hearing before the court, and that's how it works.
Correct me if I'm wrong, this is a whole lot more simpler than an annexation.
A whole lot, yes, a whole lot. Well, it's not,
correct.
it's not
Contested.
antagonistic.
Right.
Everybody's
Not like we're
agreeing.
taking property.
And that's what we did on the Scott Farm. That was agreeable as well.
Yes.
The last contested annexation was a long time ago. Cost a lot of money, and we ended up finally agreeing on that. The town and the county have gotten along pretty well. I'll just say this, Mr. County Administrator Randy Keaton, he came from North Carolina, and in North Carolina, boundary adjustments happen all the time because there's a realization in there that nobody loses any revenue. And so the county, in allowing this property to come into the town, they don't lose any revenue. They still get their, they don't, they might lose, they don't get the personal, wait a minute, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they get,
Very little, maybe some sales tax and things like that, but the loss of revenue is so minuscule, they still pick up their real estate taxes and their personal property taxes. So they don't lose much at all. They lose a little bit of control, but the general consensus is, well, it's still part of the county, and we just, and in this instance, they pick up additional water customers, which they desperately want. Of course, none of that's approved yet, but that's the agreement anticipates that. So in other words, with the county is sort of realize it's not controversial anymore. It's not antagonistic because they've kind of come to the realization that it's not a loss to them.
So does this come before town council
It's gotta be a
once
public
the,
hearing. You have to have a public
does the
hearing.
county need to approve their portion
Yeah.
first, and then we
Well,
have
they're
a
gonna have
public hearing?
They have a public hearing, and we have a public hearing, and then we file the petition, and it goes to.
But would the public hearing be scheduled next month, or after the
Yeah.
Board of Supervisors decide what,
Well, no,
that they're agreeable to it? They're
They-
already
they're
agreeable?
They want, they're ahead of us. They want to do it. They're
Oh,
pushing us to
okay.
do it.
So this should come at the March,
The March town council.
March,
meeting.
council meeting.
okay,
Yeah.
for a public hearing.
yes, ma'am, and by then we'll know what the county
Yeah.
has done.
Oh, okay. What Michael said.
Wait, Michael said.
Okay, number 4,
You
Bill?
asked about sunset.
I did.
A sunset rate, it's, a sunset clause or regulation is the idea is that after a certain period of time, your permits or zoning would expire. And so when you raise that issue, the county attorney and I have had a discussion about this, and we are both of the opinion that that's not legal for a locality to impose that.
It's not?
It's not. But there's nothing in the town and the county can only do what the General Assembly says we can do. It's called the Dillon Rule, you've heard of that. Their ordinance says you can do this and you can do that, but it does not provide for putting expiration dates on zoning. And there's lots and lots of litigation and controversy over the years about vested rights. People who own property, if they obtain certain zoning, they're vested in that, and you can't take it away from them. Now, the exception to this would be a voluntary proffer, and I've actually done this with clients in the past. In fact, there have been developers years ago that I represented before the county, and they said, as part of their proffer conditions, they said, if we do not develop this as we have proposed within a certain period of time, we, the developer, will not oppose any action by the locality to change the zoning classification. But that was voluntary. And so the developer, and I think that would still be legal, if somebody could say, we agree to a sunset clause. We agree, if we don't develop this in 10 years and you decide you don't like it, you can downzone it. You can make, the locality can file an action to change the zoning classification, to downzone it back to whatever you want to.
But that has to be
But
voluntary.
it has to be proffered by the
Developer.
property owner.
Oh, okay.
But you can't say, you couldn't say if an applicant came along and said, I want you to rezone this, and you could say, well, we'll do it, but we're only gonna do it if you agree to
Bill.
a sunset clause for 10 years or 15 years. That would be illegal.
Oh, okay.
May I ask a question? Realizing we've got developments out there that have been approved for many, many years, and also understanding that things do change, such as service saturation is what I call it. Schools, emergency services, things like that. How does that play into the capability of the regulating authority, such as the town or county, to say yes or no, as far as them continuing with what was initially approved? And I think it's kind of what Valerie's asking, but anyway, maybe a little bit differently. But what was approved 20 years ago, the scenario is not what it was 20 years ago, and there is no sunset clause what tool do we have at our avail, or law, or anything, to say, yeah, we realize that, but right about now, the time has come that can't afford to have.
You don't have to approve it. Nothing that comes, you don't have to approve anything that comes before you,
Uh,
as long as you do it on the basis of, as long as your decision is based on some rational reason. It can't be, well, you didn't offer us cash proffers, that's completely illegal.
Understood.
You didn't offer us any land that we otherwise need off-site. You can't turn things down for illegal reasons. But the right to say yes and no is absolute to the governing body. Now, with respect to, the town and the county are completely different. I don't know of a single piece of property in the town that has vested zoning that has just been sitting there for years and years and years. Now, the property we were just talking about, behind the, but behind the Royal Farms, that was what, 3 or 4 years ago? It was probably longer than that. It's before the pandemic.
Prior to Bowery Scott,
So,
just prior to.
yeah, so 5 or 6 years. It's been sitting there 5 or 6 years. And if you recall, that developer came to you and, he came to the planning commission, and he may have even come to council just for informational purposes. And if you recall, his conversation was, the COVID has changed everything. I can't build that type of project because it has internal corridors, and I can't get financing for that. And so I want to change this to something else. That was his pitch to the town council. So 5 or 6 years is not a really long time on something like this. The county has projects out there that have been on the books for
And, yeah.
decades.
Right.
For example, Eagle Harbor, that, because I was involved in that way back a long time ago when that came through. That was rezoned by the county for twice the density that it already is. And it sat there for years and years and years until East West came along and said, that's an interesting piece of property, we buy it, and we'll buy it, and we will downzone it. We will go from, 6,000 units to whatever it is now. It's approximately half of what it was originally proposed. But the county, unlike the town, has, well, you see them all the time. People talk about this unit, this development, and they're all sitting there, and they've never been built. The reason they're not being downzoned is because they can't. The county doesn't have the authority to do that. They can't go back and say, well, we don't like this, and so we want to
Well,
change.
that's my point, and you've differentiated between,
Yeah, you don't,
that's why I'm going to
They
planning
can't.
commission school next week in Richmond.
they can't go back and say, we don't like this. Now, I know.
But what, we don't like it is one thing.
Right. We don't-
Justifying
we don't
why
like
we
it.
don't like
We
it
don't
is
like this,
different.
and we want to, I've been doing this a long time.
I know.
The Macclesfield property, does anybody remember what
Yeah.
that was? Down on Smith's Neck. The county rezoned that for this developer out of Northern Virginia. Dan Cusel was his name. It was a really controversial thing. He proposed this enormous development down there, and then immediately they decided like within the year, that they wanted to downzone it. Well, Judge Easton and I were lawyers in private practice back then, and we represented him, and it's illegal. They can't do that. So the county tried to downzone something, and they lost a lot of money because they acted illegally. And so, you shouldn't act illegally.
No.
You shouldn't do things that you know you can't do. But that's the, but when people come to you with new projects, you have the right to say, yes, we like that, or no, we don't, and for this reason, or for that reason, we don't think that's good. And everybody, it's not improper to do that. Now, you can have disagreements about whether you think it's right or wrong, and whether you think it's the highest, and the real standard for zoning is this the highest and best use for this property? That's what the highest and best use, that's the standard for measuring. And if you say, well, no, it's a good project, but it otherwise negatively affects the town and this way
Because
and that
highest
way,
and best could be in conflict with each other.
it could be. And so it could be, might be the highest, but not the best. And that's for you to decide, and your decision is pretty much final. But citizens don't have standing to sue you for your decision on stuff like that, because you're presumed to be acting reasonably.
Well, what brought it up is just a number of things that, you pick up as you read, and how many of these developments are still out there,
Well, and
and
there are
what's it gonna do as far as the schools are concerned, and the fire service and police and
The whole
things like
school
that.
thing is a real mess now, because the reason it's a mess is because they've changed the rules about it. You can't accept cash proffers if the data shows that, if the school data shows that they can currently serve the proposed number of children that the development is supposed to have.
Right.
And you can't accept cash proffers for non-school items if you don't have a comprehensive plan that identifies a need.
And a defensible need.
Yeah, a defensible need. If the town of Smithfield has a comprehensive plan and it says we need these improvements, then a developer can say, in addition, if you approve this, one of our proffers is that we will give you X number of dollars towards a new fire truck, a new public safety, but things that are identified in your comprehensive plan, they can make a proportionate or, well, just a voluntary contribution of cash towards the locality for that. And over the years, we've accepted that.
But you can't make it so arbitrary that it shuts down development and things like that. It has to be defensible.
Yeah, and you're not supposed to collect cash proffers from developers for off-site improvements that have no relation to the development. And in other words, if that development has no impact on a certain function of the town, you can't accept cash for that because it's not rationally related.
Sure. Thank you.
I have a question.
Right.
Bill, when you said we can't accept cash proffers, and I understand that, can a recommendation for a proffer be made, like a sunset clause too? So you can't recommend any proffer?
Is
Is that
It's
what
a
you're telling
really,
me?
okay, the law changed a few years ago. It used to be, in Albemarle County, the law used to be, there was a proffer study, and the number was $11,189. And it was called the Tischler study. And if you wanted something zoned in this county, you better be willing to put in writing that you're gonna give $11,189 per unit. And it used to be, it could be paid up front, and very often it was. And then the General Assembly said, nope, you can't do that. You can't collect it until the house is built. Well, that changed part of that. And then it came along and said, all that is complete, it's got to be, that's just made up. You have to have, those numbers can't just be ransom, basically. And so that's all been done away with, and they adopted a regulation that pretty much made it illegal for localities to ask for money. Now, there's still nothing illegal about a developer offering you money, and sometimes they do.
Yeah, but my question is you can't make an offer to say, we like what you're doing, but we don't want it to sit there for 30
Well,
years. Can you
well,
put a proffer of a
So
sunset?
the answer to your question, Mr. Smith, is you can, but you have to do it in a certain way.
Right.
It can't be heavy-handed. There can be, Mr. Napolitano, and you all know who he was. He was very integrally involved in this many years ago when the law was changed. And it all was driven by Northern Virginia more than anything down here. Up there, proffers had gotten out of hand. They were $40,000 and $50,000 per unit, and it was just ransom. And so, bad situations make bad law, and that's what caused the pendulum to swing back to the middle. And as soon as that law was passed, localities took the position, they all rescinded their proffers statements, and they all pretty much said, we can't even talk about this, and made it almost, they told their staff, Ms. Clary, you can't talk about proffers anymore. And that's really not the way it works anymore. You can sit down and you can have discussions, you can have negotiations, you can identify what your needs are, and you can say, look, you understand these are what our challenges are here. We have school needs, we have these kinds of needs, these are our costs. Just so you know what's out there, this is why your development is a challenge. And based on that, a developer can themselves say, well, you know what, if I'm interested in seeing my development approved, maybe I need to put some cash on the table to address these needs that the town has identified, or the county has identified. So the answer is yes, but you can't say, I really like your project, but I'm not gonna vote for it unless you give me some cash. That's just.
Well, I'm not talking about the cash again, I'm talking about the sunset clause, period, that
Well,
Valerie's
that's-
question about. You know, and that's not a cash
Right.
offer, that's just a reasonable
Right.
offer.
And the answer is, you can say that would, we'd be really amenable to a sunset clause here. And if the developer has immediate plans to build their development, they're probably not gonna have a hard time about it. But the economy changes, it's like,
Right.
Mr., I forgot what his name is, Mahmoudis, the guy on the Royal Farms property. He was all ready to go, and
Brought a shovel to the meeting.
he didn't see, he was, at the night he approved it, he says, we're ready to go.
He's like, I got a
And
shovel
then
in the car, I'm going to build it.
Along came COVID, and nobody foresaw it, and it changed things dramatically.
So it can be done.
It
but-
can be done. You have to do it.
There you go, Valerie.
But once again, all those kinds of things, the situation has to be voluntary, and if you act in a way that is otherwise seen to be coercive, you're getting out of your lane.
Everybody's got to be in good faith.
Yeah.
Everything's got to be in good faith, that's right.
I just wanted explanation, well, for myself, maybe everybody else knew it, but we don't really have any projects on the books like the county
No,
does.
ma'am, we don't really have that kind of a
Yeah.
situation in the town, because we don't have any large, like, most of the property, there's some tracks down Nike Park Road that are undeveloped, but they're at the lowest zoning designation. They're not approved for anything. It'd have to be, approved by, as part of a rezoning. Same thing behind the Tractor Supply, all that land back there. Those are the big tracks that you can think of.
I know on the agenda that was the last thing, but I do have one other.
I've got like 4 or 5 more on here toward the end.
You do?
But go ahead.
Oh, that I like to bring up. I had a conversation with Dick Grice today as a result of the cottages at Battery Park. Just a general conversation. I'm a proponent of affordable housing, workforce housing, whatever you want to call it, not Section 8 housing, even though I do support Section 8 housing because there's a need for it. But persons, I also firmly believe that we have a more enhanced or stronger community when people live and work here. So I'm a proponent of housing for teachers, police officers, EMT employees or whatever. And I know that affordable housing has been a topic with the Board of Supervisors recently. And Dick asked me if we would be amenable to listen to a presentation from their VACO meeting. They had a conversation or a presentation on affordable housing, and I told him, yes, I spoke for y'all. I don't know if you're agreeable to it, but I did tell him that we would be open to listening to the presentation. And I know affordable housing is not anything that I recall that our town council has even had an open discussion about it. Personally, I want to make it known publicly that that was why I voted for Scott Mallory, the Mallory Scott Farm subdivision, because Napolitano did talk about affordable housing. I don't know how long ago that was now. His first phase is broken, but it's single-family homes. I'm disappointed that they're not the townhouses and the duplexes. But with what's happening in the real estate market, by the time that he gets ready to develop that, I don't know how affordable it's going to be. And I know that the Planning Commission at their last meeting had a presentation by Lynn Briggs and how all the subdivisions are affecting the school system. It doesn't directly affect us. That's something that the county, the Board of Supervisors, and the school board, needs to work out. Even though I questioned the numbers in the presentation, I felt like there were some areas that they did not take in consideration. And overall, they saying that the birth rate is lower too, which would play a part into this presentation, but I don't recall that being discussed. But I just want to know if we were amenable to having a meeting, if Dick is able to arrange this presentation on affordable housing.
I mean, could we do it at a committee meeting? How long's the presentation?
Well, see, he's not even sure he can get the speaker. He's
Okay.
asking if he's able to get the speaker, would we be open to hearing it?
I think we would be remiss if we didn't listen to that, unless Bill,
No, I was gonna say, this has been, back in 2006 or 2007, this was an enormous issue, and this, town council had lots of discussions, and the county did too. There were task force on affordable housing, and there were we brought in experts, and we talked about, you know, they were mandating that a certain portion of your development had to be, they had to qualify for first-time home buyers that could meet a certain income level and all that sort of thing. And then along came 2008, and
And
the
the
economy went
bust, yeah.
to nothing. And for the first time in my memory, property values declined instead of, they declined a lot. And so that just kind of made all of that evaporate. The whole affordable housing push went to nothing. We were, and I'll tell you how it affected the town was with Pinewood Heights. We had to relocate all those residents back there. Mr. Gibbs and Mr. Collins, you may not know, but the town has had the largest grant ever in the state for the relocation of the residents of the Pinewood Heights subdivision behind the packing plants. And we had to go and find affordable housing, and it was extraordinarily difficult because housing in Alawite County was very expensive. And then that came along and fixed our problem because housing opportunities opened up. But we're kind of moved in that direction again, and we're probably at the same place we were in the early 2000s with property values and that sort of thing. And so and I'm sure that there are all these experts that you're talking about, Ms. Butler, that have come up with more ideas and innovations about how to deal with it or not. So, but y'all haven't talked about it because it wasn't an issue, but there have been councils and boards of supervisors in the past that talked about the same thing and tried to figure out what to do about it.
I think if you can keep talking with them, Madam Vice Mayor, and see what the deal is. I mean, I won't speak for the whole council, but again, I think we would be remiss if we didn't listen to that. I mean,
I'll let you
Yeah, I
know
agree.
what
I
he comes
agree.
up
We
with.
would be. We do need to listen. Yeah.
Okay.
but I remember those days, Bill. I bought a home on Wilson Road, 3-bedroom. You know the house, Valerie. When I used to live in that year, I think it was 2007, 2008. I bought it for $130,000, and it was like, and sold it 2 years later, and it just, I mean, it was just, that's how things were going back then. So, all right. So continue on with Mr. Grice.
Okay. Are there any other topics to be discussed under my committee? Randy?
Yeah, I just have one. I was talking with rezoning tonight, reminded me that we had asked the county to consider rezoning the property beside the library, YMCA, from DNR, Downtown Neighborhood Residential, to Parks and Rec. Have we heard anything on that, any further consideration? That is a piece that's future planning that if we could downzone that property, we could certainly have a better chance of protecting it.
You can but you can't do it of your own accord.
We cannot. That's why we're asking the county, if they,
Correct.
as the owner of the property.
Exactly.
Would they please apply for a rezoning on that? And if you get any pushback, we can always reach out to
Check again.
our new supervisor, Roundtree.
If there are no other comments or questions, my committee is closed.
All good. Thank you, ma'am. Just a few housekeeping things. We've got coming up at the council meeting, certificate of appreciation. I think we're going to have Councilwoman Roundtree here for that. And we will be discussing, so be asking questions or doing whatever you need to do as far as due diligence is concerned. We do have to set the real estate tax rate. Michael's got reams of paper and things like that if you want to see it, and questions or whatever to be asked. I think we're between 14 and 17 thereabout.
17 is the max, because that's what's.
17 's the
That's
max,
what's been
yeah.
advertised.
I knew we had to advertise a certain way, but anyway. And also, got the town council minutes. And then, one of the most important things, please dress in your good attire. We have town council, group photo, and individual photos that will end up going on the website for our two new gentlemen that have joined us, whatever. But we would like to get a nice new group picture and stuff like that. We'll go
So
from there.
dress nice. Okay. I
Do
got
the
that.
best we can what we got to work with, okay, how's that sound? Anybody else have anything to come before town council committees? If not, thank y'all very much, meeting adjourned.
Don't get too close to me. My text message.